Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for your interest in Cornell's Executive Master of Human Resource Management program. I'm Susan Beauregard. As Callan noted, the Executive Director. I just want to welcome you. We've done several other webinars to explain the program structure and student experience, and those webinars are available on our website. Our goal today is really to share the perspective of Emhrm graduates a few years out so you can get a sense of the impact and value of this degree from their eyes. Our moderator today is Chris Collins. Chris is an associate professor of human resources studies and also the director of graduate studies for the ILR school. Chris was one of the founders of this program, and he's one of our core Emhrm faculty. I'll turn it over to Chris now to introduce our Emhrm grads, and special thanks to them for joining us today. Chris?
All right, thanks, Susan. Really excited that you guys could join us today, or those of you who are watching it virtually post the session. Maybe for me, I'm even more excited because I get to see Jackie, Monica, and Ruben, three of my all-time faves from the program, and get to hear what they're up to now and what's new in their world and share that with you. I just want them to each take 30, 40 seconds to introduce themselves to you so you guys have a sense of where they are now, and then we'll jump into some of the questions. So maybe we'll go Jackie, then Monica, and then Ruben.
Sure, thanks, Chris. So hello, everyone. I'm Jackie Czaplinski. I am currently a talent partner at Google. I actually came to the program by way of insurance. So I was at Aetna for roughly 15 years prior to my taking on of the Cornell program. Switched to Morgan Stanley for about 3.5 years and just recently switched again to Google. So wonderful to meet all of you virtually. Looking forward to helping answer your questions because I cannot say enough great things about this program and how it has changed my life. So I'll pass it over to Monica.
Thanks, Jackie. Hi, everyone. So I'm Monica Chan. Similarly to Jackie, when I went through the program, I was at NBC Universal and have since, from the Talent Pipeline program role that I was at NBC Universal, pivoted into an HR business partner role. And today I'm actually with SiriusXM Pandora. I've been there for 2 years now, and I'm in an HR business partner role there, supporting programming, finance, legal, and facilities right now. I'm actually currently on maternity leave right now, but right about to jump back in next week. So super excited to be part of this discussion today and answer any questions that you might have as you might be deliberating whether or not to join the program. Ruben.
It's so nice to see all these smiley faces today over here. I love them. So Ruben Ponte, I am a global talent director at Airbnb. I've been in this company for almost 4 years now. When I finished basically the program is when I joined Airbnb. Airbnb is basically a functional organization, very much like Apple could be. And I am the talent director that takes care of the business groups, basically. So I have a team, a global team of talent partners reporting to me, APAC, in EMEA, and in Americas. And again, we take care of the sales, marketing, and those organizations, that are much more business related. So happy to be with all of you today, and hopefully will be like a productive session for all of us.
Great. Thanks to the three of you again for joining us. Let me start with the first question. And you've already laid this out a little bit in terms of how much movement you've had since the program started for you in 2017. But just to talk to the group a little bit around, how the program's impacted your careers post completing the EMHRM program.
So I can start with that. I think that you become like a way better HR professional, a more rounded one, a more strategic one. The program teaches you and allows you to put together people strategies. Like a well-rounded people strategy around the groups that you have, or the company basically that you lead in that regard. A company is like a living organism. And at the beginning of your career, you understand certain pieces of how that organism basically behaves. A program like this allows you to understand the entire organism, and you touch over here, it has an impact over here. So that is basically the rounded approach that a program like this provides. You simply become better at doing HR.
For me personally, like the impact that the program had for me was, I was in more of a specialized area, focused more on recruiting and early career development, managing talent and pipeline programs. I had the goal to move into an HR business partner position, but the transition was not an easy one to make without some formal structure and education behind it. And so going through the program for me personally really helped spring pad, and scaffold the ability to, build a broader base of knowledge in HR and then make the move. So, thanks to the program, I've been able to move into an HR business partner position and, really happy that I did that.
So for me, it was twofold. I think there was a huge advantage on a personal level. I had been at the same company for the duration of my career, and taking on something like this that was so new and having to like test my skills and learn new ways of thinking, I felt like it really gave me the confidence to have more faith in my own ability. From a professional standpoint, not only was the classwork just eye-opening, and it kind of taught me a way to ask more insightful, powerful questions that I think most of us kind of skip just trying to get to the end. And it was really thinking like, what does success look like? Why? What would be different today if we did it this way versus that way? And that, besides the fact we got to network with all of our classmates and professors. So you're meeting, 30 to 40 individuals who are clearly just smarter than you, brilliant, and having that collective thought has really helped my network. Not even just to move different companies, but really to have that group that you ask questions to, that you kind of have as your safe ground to say, I'm stuck, what would you think? And that they're that unbiased third party that isn't impacted directly by, they're not trying to sabotage or anything else. You would just have the safe space of asking questions so you can do what you need to do your job more effectively.
Great. It's a great start. And so I think all three of you touched on this a little bit, but in reflecting back on the program, was there particular content, models, areas of the program that you've leaned on a lot over the last 3 or 4 years? Are there particular things that have really stuck with you that you can think of?
I can start here. So for me, like I mentioned before, the well-roundedness of the content itself. So having the ability to sit through, a compensation and total rewards class, or, from a business perspective, competitive advantage, and, finance for business. It really was helpful to go through, and the discussion boards that we had to go through and post our thoughts, really I think that was really the meat and potatoes of like interacting with the classmates, even though we weren't always in the same time zone or same place, but we were able to have live discussions on these boards. And you could just tell everybody comes from different backgrounds, different cultures, different positions at their companies, and just different communication styles, and the way that the conversations happen and organically the learnings happen through the discussion boards. I thought that was something I still look back at, and I still go back and look at my notes sometimes, those case studies. I still pull up that Zappos article that we all studied at that point, and think about Lululemon and the company culture. So there's a lot of content that sticks because you talk a lot about it through the various platforms that the program makes available for the cohort to interact. And I have to say, all around, from the broad scope of the content to the way that we interacted with each other, really, there's a lot of takeaway there.
So for me, I'm a bit of a data nerd. So the data analytics class was so life-changing for me. Correlation is not causation. I can still hear Professor Houseconneck say this multiple times before our classes. I have used this in all of my roles that I have been in since completing the program, because it is so important, and it is our future, right? Big data, trying to identify trends. As we look at HR, we are trying to summarize the complexity of a human into little data subsets. And what ends up happening often is you can kind of make the data say what you want it to say, depending on how you skew it and how you look at it. And so as somebody who's done a lot of HR business partner work and talent partner work, we often jump to, well, the data says this must be the issue. And really being able to be empowered to say, data doesn't tell us what's wrong, it tells us where to look, right? It tells us that there are a multitude of factors. And having that, strategic way of thinking has really revolutionized the way that we've been able to impact how we identify talent, who gets to get a promotion, who gets the program, acceptance. So we've been using that a lot, especially in my new world within Google. And the other thing that seems so silly, but I use all the time, is the communication plan template. It's not incredibly complex. It doesn't have all of these rows of information, but it really clearly makes you stop and think who, what, where, when, how, right? Does this group need to know something different from this group, and at what cadence? And where would they go if they have questions? What do they do if they get stuck? Like, it just helps you take, I think, really complex things and break them down into easy to do steps. So it's much easier to be more effective.
I agree. To me, the modules that were more impactful, were the change management. The program gives you a framework. I'm working in a very fast-paced, type of organization like Airbnb. This is tech. We introduce change all the time. We are proud disruptors in the industry. And what the program gives you is like the capacity to control the pace, or try to control the pace at least. When to accelerate, when to pause, when to say no. That is not a change that we should be doing. And the pressure, that you receive all the time, it is important. So having tools and mechanisms to control, that pressure, when change get triggered, is really important. The best analogy that I can find, to describe this is like driving with a stick. You need to use your two hands, your feet. You need to pause. You need to. It's not automatic. Life and companies don't play in automatic. So this is basically what the program gives you, is like your toolkit. Suddenly you become a more rounded, type of professional, and much more confident, in your abilities, to handle situations that don't have like a yes or no or true or false type of response. This is HR at the end of the day. So you need to educate your instincts, on how you basically handle stuff, but you also have to have frameworks and mechanisms and tools to do your job, basically.
Yeah, that's great. So what I love is the three of you came into the program from different companies and different backgrounds, and clearly there's content that hit for each of you differently. But the big picture is really still that the solidity of the frameworks and the models that you can draw from. Let me switch gears a little bit. So if you flip the switch and say now that you're an expert, having been a student in the program and balanced all the challenges, any advice that you would give to potential students or those that are coming in terms of how do you get the most out of the program, given everything you're balancing in your lives while you're taking it?
A lot of caffeine. No, besides that, my best advice to anyone who is going to embark on this journey is the fact that your learning happens in and outside of the classroom. And I mean that both in person and virtually. So one of the things that I think I was absolutely blown away by that Cornell did was the selection of our cohort. We were just a diversity treasure chest. We had a woman who came from Dubai every time we had residential weeks. We had numerous people who were not born in America, right? Brazil, we had Australia. You had individuals who celebrated a 35th birthday, and we had 50th birthdays. They were from all walks of life, different stages of career, and every single one of them taught me something. We really did get along just so fantastically because we really did embrace everyone's differences, and hearing different perspectives and where they're getting stuck. It made you feel you weren't alone, even if it wasn't exactly like, the same exact situation. You're like, I deal with something like that too. So my best advice is just that every professor, but also every person, represents an opportunity for you to learn something new if you're open to it. And you can't get that really in a corporate setting where the entire goal is just to teach you something that you didn't know yesterday.
Yeah. Learning is fun. So my best advice is just enjoy it. And the program is just an excuse to go way deeper into a function that is HR that you are not wrong and say like, I want to be like an HR professional. It's something that you get and you build on it. I mean, so to me, my experience is like what Jackie was saying, like you suddenly have like a cohort of people that is really diverse that help you over there. You have professors that are top notch, but that is just the beginning of the journey. I mean, let me share a secret with you. I mean, while I was basically enrolled in the program, I built my own library. I mean, of HR books. I mean, and I don't know if you can see it over here. I mean, color coded. I mean, but those are just HR books that I use as a reference on a daily basis over here. So my advice to you is like, have fun. This is like a program that allows you to become really curious about a discipline that is fascinating. So enjoy it.
Ruben, I'll match your bookshelf with my bookshelf. Mine is much smaller, but working on it as well. So good point, Ruben. And I guess the only thing that I would sprinkle on, you know, the awesome points that Jackie and Ruben already made is it's such an advantage to be both a working professional and a student at the same time. And you absolutely, you know, it's you know, every lesson that you take from the classroom, you can take back to work, and you know, you take your challenges at work, you bring it to the classroom to enrich the conversations that happen in the classroom, and it just amplifies from there. So I would just say that, you know, as a working professional, it's to me, it was truly valuable to kind of be both at once.
That's great. I mean, so to me, you know, having been around this program for as long as I have, I think that the heart of what all three of them hit on are some of the key points, right? Which is one, the richness of who you get to be with and the selectivity of who's in the program, and you know, the diverse backgrounds and experiences from what industry, what stage, what country that they're coming from is so much of the learning is from each other. I think the second point, which they've all been pretty clear about, is this is the start of the journey rather than the end of the journey. So it's, you know, it's partly about how do you then continue to build off this. And one of the things I've always tried to encourage is to also think about how to build content to content within the program. So to keep the learning more coherent is how do you stick things together week on week as you go through the program. And then, you know, how do you create a great bookshelf like Ruben has, is awesome. All right, let me try a fourth one. And again, this is probably coming off of the last point, is, you know, you got to know a lot of people in the program, both your colleagues, the faculty, you know, the guest lecturers who are executives from companies that we brought into, put in front of you during the program. So how have you tried to leverage that network? How do you keep those relationships alive, and how are they impacting you guys in your careers?
I can go on this. To me, two main points. I mean, my colleagues were like a invaluable, safety net. I mean, I was saying it before. You don't have all the answers. I mean, we work in a discipline that there is not like a right or wrong. I mean, and you hesitate all the time. I mean, so having like a cohort of people that you can reach out and you can openly say like, I don't know. I mean, have you done this before? I mean, how are you approaching this? I mean, the last couple of years, COVID, I mean, who knew? I mean, how to react to something as big as that? I mean, it was impossible. And the other thing is like the cohort is very diverse. I mean, from people from very different industries. This accent comes from Spain, but I've been in Silicon Valley for the last 12 years. And when you work in Silicon Valley, it's like a funnel. I mean, it's tech. I mean, we all speak about the same language. We have the same blah, 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 blah. And suddenly you are in touch, I mean, with people from all over the world. I mean, from very different industries that approach similar type of problems, but in different ways. So the richness of the cohort is in the diversity, I think.
I would say another thing is, you know, when opportunities come up, Chris, like if we're recruiting for something or there's like an opportunity that comes across our desk, the first people I always think about are my classmates, right? Like, you know how fun they are, you know how hard they work, you know their work ethic, and all of that. So, I'm always tapping into my classmates first when there's an opportunity. And, everything that Ruben already said, I would just second that.
So I would add on, I think we talk a lot about the cohort, but I would also talk about the faculty. So I actually recently switched jobs and I found myself in a bit of a conundrum. And I had emailed Professor Collins and I hadn't talked to him in a while. And I was like, hey, I need help. And he didn't hesitate to make the time for me and kind of just work through my thought process and kind of give me some watch outs and things, other things to think about here. Be careful with this, like control what you can, accept what you can't. He's just a great blend of academia meets experience, right? He's taught for a long time, but he also had consulting experience. And he's got this great blend of, academia experience with this sarcastic flair that I love. So it feels like a friend is giving me advice, right? I'm not, being lectured at. I'm having this, great, really fulfilling conversation that feels like a friend helping me out. And even though we hadn't talked with COVID and everything for, almost, a year, didn't hesitate, picked up right where we left off. And I've had several experiences like that with other faculty members. So it's also your group and the faculty. And I think we use social media a lot in our cohort. I can't tell you with COVID how many questions have come up in this group of 30 going, hey, what are like your return to work policies? What's hybrid, restrictions? And we are all experiencing it for the first time. So just having kind of insights from what other firms are doing or what other people are dealing with. And some of us are ER, labor law centric, some of us aren't. So it's nice to have that thought partnership as well.
Great. I do remember you reaching out to me saying, Jackie who? Of course, just kidding. So the three of you again came from different employer backgrounds. Any thoughts you had in terms of either how your employer, your company was supportive of you, how you thought about trying to bring back learnings from the program to the workplace? So how do you share that with your peers back at work? Any thoughts in that space?
Well, for me at the time, when I was with my previous employer, they were super supportive, of me going through the program. And, I've had open discussions at the time with my manager at the time about my career goals. And so I had full support from that front. And upon completion of the program, there was a maternity leave on the West Coast that happened to be one of those like mutually beneficial situations where, they needed help to cover an HR business partner that was going on maternity leave. I actually wanted that experience and didn't have it. And, they allowed me to go out there, bungee into a new position. I got the experience I wanted. They got the coverage that they wanted. And so with the support of the program, I felt like, we landed in a win-win situation with my former employer at the time, which is perfect.
Yeah, awesome.
So I would say that for me, I felt like the program really resulted in a ripple effect. So it wasn't just the projects or the models that I took back, which were incredibly helpful. And it was more than that. It was the way that I worked, the types of questions I started to ask, the way we started designing solutions differently than we did before. And I think when you start asking more strategic questions, you elevate the people around you, right? We're now talking about the things that we didn't identify before. We're really deep diving into our lessons learned and understanding how we can actually get and implement better than we did before. So I really felt like it was a ripple effect. Like the stronger I got, the stronger the people around me got. And we can see the ramifications all the way down into even some of our interns, like teaching them to ask the questions that, I had just learned from this program. So it was definitely that for me.
Yeah, you become better. You become more strategic and you start just challenging the status quo. You start just making questions and the why and for what. I mean, those questions can really, so I can give an example. I mean, change management again is the day-to-day. I mean, in this environment. And we were doing a really poor job, I mean, in how we communicate, change. So when I finished, the program, I started asking within the HR department, like, hey, should we invest in internal communications? And that basically created a ripple effect. I mean, and right now we have like a way stronger, we invested. We have like a way stronger internal comms team. I mean, that allow us, I mean, to divide and conquer. I mean, the talent directors, I mean, basically create a strategy of the change, the transformation and everything, but then you have a team that support you basically on the communication to the employees all the way. So, and that came from questions that I get, I mean, from the program, I mean, and the framework that we get over there. So it does have an impact. It's very tangible.
Good. So we got a few questions coming in from the folks online with us. And one that is really common that we hear all the time is, it sounds like the program's great, but I've got a full-time job, I've got a family, there's life. How did you, the three of you, think about the balance? Because I do, my own experience with the program is this is a hard program. It's not like you just watch a few videos and hey, that was fun. It's a pretty intense program. We ask a lot of you. So just thoughts on how you created your own balance. How did you manage the workload? Any tips of the trade for prospective students?
I would say just a little at a time every day. For me, I'm a morning person, and I knew that, I can dedicate uninterrupted time in the morning. So every morning I would go onto the platform, I would pull, the assignments, and then I would work on it throughout the week. That worked for me. And obviously, the conversations around that need to happen with just support in order to make that happen was important as well. But I would say the biggest thing for me is just, every morning, do what you have to do, and then do what you want to do later in the day.
So I would say it's the same thing. How do we get our work done and manage our families if we have them, right? It's time management and commitment. One of the things that I think helped me was the mental state of, I'm doing this, right? Failure wasn't an option. So where there's a will, there's a way, all the cliches. But for me, I waited till my kids were asleep. So I half joke about the caffeine, but there was a lot of caffeine involved. I was doing an international job at the time. So there were a lot of papers being written on 11, 12-hour flights. But it was enjoyable, especially because, you find the things that you hated and I got them out of the way fastest. And then there were things I loved, which was the discussion board. And I got really into, there were, 5 or so people whose opinions were always just so different than mine. I would always scroll and find their names. You're like, I want to know what this person would say or that person. And it made it enjoyable. So it didn't feel like work. So like Monica said, chipping away, finding a schedule that works for you. We had a couple folks who would do everything Friday night if it was due Saturday, others half hours in the morning, evenings. Like the blessing of this program is that it is so flexible, but just don't doubt yourself, right? There are going to be days you're going to feel like, what did I sign up for? But you will get through it, and it is worth it, and it pays dividends in the end.
Yeah, it's manageable, but you need discipline, and every minute counts, is what I would say. Same than Jackie. I don't know how many essays I wrote on an airplane. I mean, but multiple at the time. I mean, and the family aspect is also important. I mean, and there is a commitment at the end of the day. For me, it was Saturdays mainly. I mean, the commitment that I made to my family, like at least I was going to be like one day completely off and dedicated. I mean, we decided that I was going to be Sundays, but I spent most of my Saturdays basically doing research, I mean, and writing the essays. So it's discipline. It's doable, of course, but it's like when you start training to run a marathon. Like, no, every day, basically, you need to basically train a little bit. And it's a commitment, and you need to have like an end goal that is finishing the program at the end of the day.
Awesome, super helpful. So another question is, a major component of the program are the 3 on-campus weeks. And thinking back to those weeks on campus, what are, if you have one memory or, one thing that really sticks out for you, and it doesn't have to be about the courses, because the week on campus together is a lot more than just the courses. But what comes to mind? Anything you're able to share publicly about the time on campus?
I was not prepared for this question, and I'm laughing so hard because so many things come to mind. I did get kicked out of Red's place. It's a small bar in town, and we tried to move chairs. Don't move chairs at that Red's Ale House or whatever it is. They will exit you from the property. But all joking aside, there were a couple big moments for me. So the first residential week ever is in August, and it was actually my birthday. I was away from all my friends and family and didn't really know anybody. We were maybe 2 days in. And someone found out about it and went to the store and bought a cake and brought it in and sang for me. And it was just, these were people we didn't know, and they didn't have to do that. And just that kind of moment of bonding, and then really watching from one residential week to the next, right? So in the first week, you don't know anybody. You're all living in like hotel rooms and separate. And then the second week, I think Ruben, you were with Alex, and we had a house for 6 women. So like we all roomed together, and it was like almost being back in college and kind of having like a sorority feel, or sharing Airbnbs, and it's just such a bonding experience. So those are for me.
Yeah, every time we went back, it was like the first time you're meeting everybody in person for the first time, and it's like super exciting, and you're like seeing everybody that you've interacted with online. But then, when you go back again for the next session, it really is like you didn't skip a beat. Like you never skipped a beat, because the communication has been fluid and ongoing the entire time. And so like you just build the relationships from there. And it was always such a great time to be on campus. Like we talk about it all the time. We still miss it to this day.
College life rocks. I mean, so when you're already at a certain age and you have the opportunity to go back on campus and to have a community, as we were saying, is amazing memories. Memories, I mean, that will stick with us, I mean, forever, because we created like a really close community. I mean, and I don't know, look, we have been, for the last couple of years, I mean, we have been living in a Zoom world. No, I mean, personal connection, touching people, hugging people, still matters. And that is basically what those 3 weeks, I mean, allow us to do it. Like, hey, let's know each other, not at a superficial level, but 2, 3, 4 levels deep over there. It was very important.
Yeah, I do think, so again, Susan had mentioned that as part of the original team that designed the program. And as we thought through it, we were hoping that the beauty of the on-campus weeks is just the depth of the relationships you guys build. Because again, we think about each cohort that comes in as being a cohort for life, that you guys are always going to be there to support each other. Because HR, particularly as you move up, it can become an increasingly lonely job of what you can share with others internally, the kinds of decisions you're forced to make, or the things you're wrestling with. And having this cohort where people really know you. And for example, if Jackie says, oh, here's the conversation I'm going to have with a senior leader, and here's how I'm going to do it, that someone can call BS on you, right? That Jackie, I know you better than that. That's really funny to talk about. How are you really going to approach it? What's really, what are your thoughts really, how you're going to go about that? So that depth of experience of knowing each other and going out to the bar together, or going out for dinner together, or rooming in the house together, all those things add to the strength of the relationship. And so, it really, that's the heartwarming part, I think, for us to know that design feature really turned out the way we thought it would. So another question in terms of big parts of the program is you all did the project that kind of carries through from day one all the way till the end. Thoughts that you guys had in terms of the project you started with, how it helped the learning, how it may have evolved over time. Just any thoughts you guys have on the project piece of the program?
I did it, I go back repeatedly to the change management thing. And the big lesson that I learned, through the project is the concept of creating a coalition of allies. And like when you prepare for a big change, how do you prepare the ground? And that is a step that typically you don't do if you are not very intentional, and suddenly you don't prepare the troops to rally behind the change at the end of the day. So the books, the kind of research that we did, the comments, were really important over there. That is the opportunity that you have, to go like really, really, really deep into a subject over there. I don't know how many books I read about it. You go like really deep, but also really spread. I mean, in the approach over here. So it was building. I mean, because it takes a good amount of time. How you start is something very different from how you end. I mean, even in your approach, the tips, I mean, and the advice that the professors give you challenge, I mean, your assumptions very deeply. I mean, so I remember that the project started here and probably ended up here, but it's always a good sign that your assumptions, I mean, were challenged even in the process.
Oh, Monica, you're muted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to say, for me, the project really, to Ruben's point, kind of started as like a pie in the sky idea. Let's test this out. And the cohort and the professors working through it, really, over a duration of time really helped refine the idea and get it to a point where, we were able to, it was at the time, it was a return to work program. It was a pilot at the company I was at. It was a small pilot to bring people who were out of the workforce for caregiving back. And we got it to a point, through the coursework and the dialogue with the professors, as well as the small cohorts that were helping each other work through the project, to a point where we were able to get the appropriate buy-in and really launch it internally. So it is a program till this day that the company still has, and it's still in operation and bigger and better than ever. And I'm no longer there. So, I would have to say, the feedback and the advice along the way was invaluable and, really made it take off.
So the project for me was obviously pre-COVID, and I had taken on a role in the international space, and we had largely faced cultural clashes, not only because we were regionally all over the world, but we were acquiring small companies. So we were absorbing existing cultures and not really having this time to understand what their culture was like. What did we want to preserve? How did we want to introduce ours? And from a training standpoint, many of them had been in their companies 5, 7, 10 years and had not had a single training or development opportunity. And so there was this, how do we do that? Like, how do we show that we want to invest in the development of our people in a scalable, cost-effective way when we're, headquartered in Hartford and they're in Dubai? And so the program, and what I loved about the project, was that we had different professors who had sort of different expertises who would look and critique it and say, from a DEI perspective and culture, look at this. From a financial perspective, look at that. And for me, what really helped was I was fairly young in my career. And so having to pitch this to the president of International to say, like, this is going to cost money up front, but here's what it's going to pay out, was a really difficult conversation for me to have. And I felt like the project and the professors really helped me do that and articulate that in a way that was effective. So even after I left, very similar to Monica, the career clinics that we were running ran at least 2 to 3 years after I was gone. So it was fun to feel like it kind of helped me create a legacy as I left.
Awesome. That's great. So one of the questions that came in, it looks like Reginald's already planning on joining and graduating. Just was asking about, did you go to graduation? Thoughts about or memories of what graduation felt like?
Absolutely went to graduation. I laughed, Professor Collins, my family came because we're close enough to drive. My son fell right outside the door and was bleeding. And so when I got my diploma, Professor Collins reminded me that my son was gushing blood. I was like, thank you. But no, it's such an amazing experience. I really encourage you to do it. And if you can, to have your family there, because you'll work really hard to get to that point. And this is Cornell, right? It is a prestigious university, and the satisfaction you feel, and then you're with your cohort and you all know you went through it together. It's like, we made it, right? And I honestly think I went to both my undergrad and graduate. I was more excited and felt more proud at this event than I did at my, undergrad. But that's just me. So Monica, go ahead.
I don't have anything to add. You basically said it all. I would just echo that. It was so fun. It was so fun. And we bought so much Cornell gear while we were out there. Just, we soaked it all in. And yes, like it was so nice to have my husband there as well. And I was so proud as everybody was walking across the stage, like the cheers, the claps, the rooting. We just, had fun with it. It was the best.
It's a moment of pride, and it goes beyond you. So my mom has the picture of the graduation. I mean, and that makes her happy. And if my mom is happy, I am happy.
Such a good son. So I think, just to come back to this, this is one of the things we didn't think through when we were designing the program. Because we're like, oh, they're all busy professionals. Who wants to do graduation? And what we missed, and how we missed it, it's hard to recognize now. But just the amount of sacrifice the family, friends will go through as you're in this program, because it does take a lot of time. It was also, to me, to be able to watch the spouses, partners, kids, parents who have given up time. And Ruben had a great suggestion of like, hey, Sundays was our day. This is family day. Saturdays I'll work, right? But recognizing the sacrifice that goes on around you. That's a big part of this graduation too, is the families getting to celebrate with you on the graduation. So that's a great question. And
look, it's recognition. That's what we do in HR. I mean, when you touch the significant other, the employee is a happy camper. That is one of the keys and one of the big lessons that we learn also in the program. You need to go to the extended, basically, circle of the employee in this case.
Awesome. So how about we come close to wrapping? I'll just ask each of you for one last thought on, now turning on your recruitment hats. What's one last thought for the group out there, either live with us now or watching it virtually later? Any last thoughts?
I would say this is Cornell. It's not BS. And that's basically what you get, what you buy and what you get. I mean, they challenge you, they squeeze you, you go completely outside of the comfort zone and in some of the assignments, and that is fun. And you need to enjoy that kind of a journey over there. I remark that. I mean, that is not. I mean, there are multiple options over there. This is the top one. I mean, if you really want to go deep into a discipline that we all love, like HR, and you want to elevate you and elevate the company that you work for, this is the place to go.
I think for me, not everyone is a working parent during COVID. I happened to be a working parent when I had signed up for this program. And I think what differentiates it from the other Ivy League, MBA, or types of programs that I had looked at and researched, and I actually had gone to another Ivy League school's sort of orientation to see if it was a program that would work for me. A lot of them are really still very inflexible. They're every weekend on campus or every other weekend. But I didn't want a fully online experience, right? I really wanted to be able to not miss the formative years of my kids, but to bring my skill to a new level, right? I shouldn't be penalized because I was a working mom. Like, I could juggle a lot, but I didn't want to give up everything for it. And this format allowed me to make lifelong relationships. It allowed me to have fun, right, in person and have that camaraderie. And it gave me the education that I was looking for. So I really, truly feel that this format is unbeatable out there. And I wouldn't be surprised if other people tried to mimic it, but it just sets it apart.
And if you're wondering whether it's worth it, it is. It's worth all the time. And it's 100%. Like, I think back all the time to where I was and where I am now, and I would not be where I am today without the program. So I say just do it. It's worth it.
Awesome. Well, I couldn't possibly have anything else to add about those three closing comments. So I want to thank Jackie and Monica and Ruben for joining us today. I know you guys have busy lives, and Monica is getting ready to return from her maternity leave. So I wish you the best of luck on Monday. It's
Thank
great to see
you.
all three of you. Thanks for the rest of you for joining. If you came in late, the video will get posted so you can see maybe what you missed in the beginning. And we hope to see all of you on campus as students in the summer. Great. Thanks again, everybody.